This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction that are not on this agenda or are on the agenda for discussion and not for action. MAG staff, have we received any public comments? And if so, please read them at this time.
Thank you, Chair and members of the Regional Council. No public comments were received for the call to the audience or any other item on today's agenda.
All right, thank you. Moving on our agenda then, item 3 is the Executive Director's report. MAG Executive Director Eric Anderson will give his report as soon as he's done taking care of the technology. Take it away, Eric.
All right, let's see what's on the next slide. So we're very happy to host a Portugal delegation, courtesy of Mayor Pereira out in Wickenburg, who is the honorary Portuguese council for the Phoenix area. So Mayor Peterson and Mayor Weiss participated in this. We had a great session, very well, a lot of issues covered. Mayor Woods was also there. Had a great discussion, once again, trying to strengthen the relationships between our businesses here in Arizona and those in Portugal too. So there's gonna be some follow-up activities related to this also. So Mr. Chair, I think that's my last slide. Go to the next one. We'll see. Oh, just another picture. There we go. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. As always, if you have any questions for Eric, please feel free to contact him after the meeting. Next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. This is for approval of items 4A through 4I. Does any member of the Regional Council have questions or requests a presentation on any of these items? If there are none, could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mayor Weiss. Is there a second? Thank you, Mayor Peterson. So we have a motion and a second. Staff, I'm sorry, remind me, I'm sorry to call you staff. That's kind of rude. What's your name?
Shane Schultz.
Shane, welcome to the meeting. Shane, would you please help us with the roll call vote?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Chair and members of the Regional Council. I will go down the list of members. Please unmute if you are virtual and indicate how you vote. Mayor Weiss.
Aye.
Mayor Wilson.
Aye.
Mayor Peterson.
Which one?
Mayor Les Peterson, sorry.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Smith.
Aye.
Mayor Harkey.
Yes.
Mayor Walter. President Bernadine Burnett.
Yes.
Mayor Dickey. Mayor Riggs. Governor Roe Lewis.
I didn't take it.
Mayor Bridget Peterson.
Yes.
Mayor Wires.
I vote aye.
Vice Mayor Hampton.
Yes.
Mayor Molina.
I vote yes.
Mayor Schoaf.
Yes. Yes.
Mayor Price.
I vote aye.
Supervisor Hickman. Mayor Bien Wilner. Mayor Carlott. Mayor Gallego.
Aye.
Supervisor Goodman. Mayor Barney.
Aye.
President Martin Javier.
Aye.
Mayor Ortega.
Yes.
Mayor Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Woods.
Aye.
Mayor Rodriguez. Mayor Rodriguez. Okay. Mayor Pereira. Mayor LaVault.
Yes.
Ms. Daniels. Mr. Meck. And Chair, how do you vote?
Aye.
Yes. Mick, yes.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that I missed? Okay, thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you. Item 5 on our agenda is support phase grant application presented by the MAG Transportation Improvement Program Supervisor Patrick Stone. Mr. Stone, thank you. Welcome and looking forward to your presentation.
Check. There we go. All right, thank you. If I get the next slide, please. So I wanted to start off my presentation with a brief pause. The USDOT announced the Raise NOFO grants back in January 28th. Since that time, which would be yesterday, they issued an amendment to that NOFO. It won't change the action we're taking today, but I just wanted to clarify in advance that there has been an amendment to the NOFO. The biggest thing is they've added additional funding that was included in the FY20. Going down the slide, the eligible applicants, eligible project types, that has not changed. Match requirements, project locations, none of that has changed. If there's questions at the end, I can certainly take those, but I'd rather just focus on the projects themselves. So if we could move to the next slide. So first, we'll review the capital grant submissions. These are those construction type projects. First, we have a pedestrian improvement project for the city of Glendale, constructing needed infrastructure upgrades, including sidewalk ramps, ADA, pedestrian lighting. The city is requesting $7.7 million in grant funding against a project total of $9.6 million. Next is a project for Maricopa County. This is to construct a river crossing over the Hasayamba River on Patton Road, just east of 299th Avenue. The county is requesting $25 million in grant funding against a project cost of $42.4 million. Next slide. City of Mesa, the Pirate Project. This would construct an additional 6 miles of new freight rail. Total project cost $106 million. Again, maximum grant request $25 million. City of Phoenix, the 3rd Street pedestrian bridge over the Rio Salado. Total project cost $35 million. Grant request $25 million. Next page. Next slide, please. And then finally, City of Scottsdale, they have their Old Town 2nd Street complete street improvement project. City is requesting $14.4 million in grant funding for a total project cost of $19.2 million. Next slide, please. So within the request, we also had one request for design funding. This was from the city of Maricopa for their Sonora Ridge Desert Parkway. This is to construct the 2nd phase of the design between Porter and Fuqua roads. Total project cost is $6.3 million. The grant request is $5 million. And then we have a planning study for the city of Surprise. This is a planning study for Litchfield, the Litchfield TI and Litchfield Road. Total project cost $25 million. The city is requesting $19.9 in grant funding. Next slide, please. Just to highlight, these grant applications are due to USDOT by April 14th, 2022, 5 p.m. The amended NOFO yesterday did not change the deadline, so all applications are still due at the same time. The request in front of you today is letters of support from MAG for these applications. Next slide. And the requested action is to approve the support applications. And with that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Are there questions? Yes, Mayor Peterson.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Were there some that you turned down?
Mr. Chair, Mayor Peterson, no, all requests that were submitted to MAG are included in this request today.
Okay, thank you.
And again, the action item today is simply for MAG to add letters of support for all of these various petitions for this federal grant.
Yes, Chair, that is correct.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve item number 5.
Thank you very much. That sounds like Mayor Ortega. Am I
Correct. Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll second approving item number 5.
Great. Thank you very much. Are there any additional discussion or questions before we vote? All right, thank you. Shane, would you take the roll call vote, please?
Chair and members of the Regional Council, I will go down the list of Members, please unmute and indicate how you vote. Mayor Weiss,
Aye.
Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Les Peterson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Smith,
Yes.
Mayor Hartke,
Yes.
President Bernadine Burnett,
Yes.
Mayor Dickey,
Aye.
Mayor Bridget Peterson,
Yes.
Mayor Wires,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Hampton,
Aye.
Mayor Molina,
Aye.
sorry, thank you. Mayor Show,
Aye.
thank you. Mayor Price,
Aye.
thank you. Mayor Gallego,
Aye.
thank you. Mayor Barney,
Aye.
thank you. Mayor Ortega,
Yes.
thank you. Mayor Hall,
Yes.
thank you. And Mr. Meck,
Yes.
thank you. And Chair, how do you vote?
Aye.
Is there anyone that I missed?
Mayor Laval votes yes.
Thank you, Mayor LaVault.
Jen Daniels votes yes.
Thank you, Ms. Daniels.
Mayor Woods votes yes too.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Woods. Anybody else?
President Javier from Salt River, yes.
Okay, thank you, President Javier. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is item 6. This is regarding the 2022 point in time homeless count results presented by MAG Regional Homeless Program Manager Nikki Stevens. Nikki, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon. Mr. Chairman, members of council, I'm here to present on the Maricopa County point in time count for. Important to note that Pinal County did not participate in the January 25th count because they are not a part of our continuum of care. Next slide, please. So first of all, I want to thank Chairman Mayor Giles for your leadership and your support and all of the media interviews that you took on for us. We could not have done this without you. So thank you so much. We do appreciate you. Just to give you some background and the purpose of the count, the point in time count occurs across the country on the last 10 days of January. And it is a requirement by HUD for cities and towns to participate in the point in time count. And just some background, the point in time count is just one small data set that we look at as a community. And there are limitations, and I'll talk about those a little later, such as self-reporting and things like that. Next slide, please. This slide will offer you just a timeline. We've had over 5 months of preparation that goes into the annual point in time count, including multiple trainings provided by MAG staff, along with trainings provided by your city and towns point in time count coordinators, including volunteer trainings across the region. The following, we follow the same protocols every year, the preparation and ensuring the data and the quality of the data that's entered is completed and deduplication efforts are had. Next slide, please. So it was amazing to see so many come out on January 25th, the morning of January 25th, and those that committed, even during the Omicron surge. We had so many participants and people calling me and other staff wanting to participate in the point in time count. And we were nervous that we would not have enough people, but we were able to have enough volunteers that we ended up covering the entire region. And the count was a success due to large part of your point in time count coordinators in your cities and towns. And that allowed us to provide the regional coverage that we needed to make the point in time count such a success. Next slide, please. This is the chart that went out, and it identifies all the municipalities and shows you the timeline and the increase that we've seen over, steadily increasing over time throughout our community. Next slide, please. This also offers you the map from that morning. So this indicates every survey and every observation that took place that morning. And it allows you just to give you a good overlay of where homelessness is occurring throughout the valley. I think it offers a good visual for us to look at ways that we can plan going forward and also look at the gaps that currently exist. Next slide, please. Also on this chart, you will see the trends that we have been seeing, for many years. This is the unsheltered point in time count. As indicated on the slide in 2021, we did not do a point in time count due to COVID-19, but you'll see that the gradual increase that has occurred of the unsheltered population. Next slide, please. So just to talk about the methodology a little bit, the point in time count this year was entirely paperless, which was amazing. But, we've been piloting this for many years to get to this point where we are paperless. So we have a better way to analyze data than we've ever have before. We're able to get the numbers to cities and towns a lot quicker. So this mobile app was an amazing part of the point in time count. And I thank our regional analytics division for creating this. Next slide, please. So how do we use the data? We are using the data for our Pathways Home Regional Action Plan. And the data that's collected can assist cities and towns in understanding their subpopulations, such as youth, veterans, families that are historically difficult to capture. It also helps in the planning purposes to see what gaps currently exist in our service area. We will be providing a progress report at the next management and committee meeting next month. Next slide, please. So how does the point in time count fit into the larger regional action plan? If you all do not know, $45 million just been awarded to Maricopa County Continuum of Care for HUD-related programs. We also look at other data and trends and variables. And I also want to, MAG would also like to thank the mayor. Sorry, that's the next slide. We are excited to get the materials in front of you next month. So this just tells you like the tracking and the changes of the homeless populations over the years. Next slide, please. So just to talk about the benefits, limitations of the point in time count, the benefits are it supports over 32 projects throughout the region and tens of millions of dollars, including the 35 million that just been awarded to our region, is because we have participated in the point in time count. And the limitations, are many, as I've discussed earlier. Families and youth are historically difficult to capture the data for because they're either hotel hopping or couch surfing. So this allows us to kind of get a general idea of who we are serving in the community. This year, we did make a concerted effort to work with the Family Housing Hub and Home-Based Youth Services to get an accurate number on the youth and families that are experiencing homelessness in our community. But this is, again, just one data source. We also have a by name list. We have the Homeless Management Information System that offers us a more accurate and robust data element. Next slide, please. So considerations for 2022, we knew that the increase was happening, that there wasn't a count last year. So the 35% looks huge just because we went from 2020 to 2022. But there's mitigating factors such as job loss, the pandemic, the rise in cost of housing, and low wage job earners who just can't keep up with those rising rent costs. Next slide, please. So looking ahead, the point in time count coordinator debrief is going to be on April 8th, 2022. I've invited all your point in time count coordinators to get feedback about how we can do better next year. We also learned a lot of lessons, like allowing for more time for cities to review their data, additional time for deduplication efforts, requesting additional information on the observation tool, allowing time for vetting with your city council. And this year we wanted to provide the unsheltered count as soon as possible than we have in past years. Next slide, please. Again, I just want to thank you all for your leadership, contributions, and support, and all of your amazing staff. And without them, we wouldn't have made this count a success this year. So I just wanted to, again, thank you all. And next slide, please. And here's my contact information if you'd like to set up a meeting with myself or any MAG staff and offer suggestions of how we can do this better next year to all of them. So thank you. Any questions for me?
Thank you, Nikki. Mayor Peterson.
Yes, Chairman Nikki, a question. Is the increase, and these are dramatically increased numbers, is that a result of you had more volunteers and you audited more markets and neighborhoods? Do we have it broken out in existing, this neighborhood this year to next year, and then we audited new ones? I'm just trying to get a handle on, is it truly 35% or is it less than that?
Well, I think because you do have more volunteers, you're going to find more people. So I think that's an indicator as well. But as far as the neighborhoods go, the point in time count coordinators are responsible for the layout of their communities to get the volunteers out to throughout that region within the city and town. But I think increase in volunteers could definitely, you're going to find more people. That's just the way it is. But again, it's just one data set. We have much better ways of telling who's in our community through the homeless management information system.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, and just a reminder, everyone, this is a 2-year, the 35% increase is over 2 years. Previous year was 16. So really this is consistent with what we saw in the last point in time count, right? Mayor Weiss.
Nikki, when your team's looking at this, what surprised you this year from 2 years ago? And then how does your team disseminate the information, get it down to the individual cities and incorporate what we found with the regional homeless plan that we approved, 5 months ago, 6 months ago, maybe? Give us some insight into that.
So we work directly with your point in time count coordinators. They have access, real live access the day of the count. And even right now they can see where all of those surveys were taken. But we have not done the shelter count yet. So we don't have a full picture. We don't have what's called the HIC, the housing inventory chart yet. That information, we're still waiting for shelters to report in. We also are looking at the subpopulation. So we'll be able to have a more robust picture going forward.
And I think the subpopulations obviously would help the cities kind of direct their efforts on this. I think a lot of us were on a GPEC call last week when they talked about the lack of housing in the valley, the lack of, I call it workforce housing over affordable housing, but the gap that's there. It'd be interesting to see as we get into May and June, what the impacts of that housing deficit have on the growing numbers. Because I think, Les, I agree with your point is when you talk about one data set being the volunteers, yes, there are many data sets and some play a more important role than others. So it'd be interesting to see, because I think when we talk about homes, home affordability, I think that's something that cities can do, work with developers on that and work with the state. Well, maybe not work with the state, but work with the developers on that. So it'd be interesting to see how those numbers shake out.
Yeah, it does fit into the larger regional education campaign, which will be able to provide more information for you in the next month. But your PIOs, your human services directors have been instrumental in creating some of this information that will get out that will allow people to welcome affordable housing in their communities. So it's a part of our larger regional campaign to educate, our homeowners associations, our neighbors and friends, and let them know to welcome affordable housing in their community.
Thank you. Other questions for Nikki? Any folks that we have participating online? Feel free to raise your hand or just speak up if you have a question. All right. Well, Nikki, I'm sorry. Mayor Gallego, please go ahead.
If you had a comment, I will go after you.
Well, I do want to comment. Why don't we let you go after me, because you'll do a better job of batting cleanup than I will. So I'll go ahead and make my point. I just want to again reiterate that because this is a 2-year gap, I don't think that 35% number is very dramatic. And but again, I think it's consistent with what has happened over the last few years. But having said that, I still think that's very disappointing, because over the last 2 years, for most of that time, we've had an eviction moratorium, and we've had an extraordinary amount of federal assistance for rental assistance and utility assistance, all aimed at preventing evictions. I know in the city of Mesa, we've dispersed over $30 million in rental assistance and utility assistance. And despite that, we're not seeing a reduction in the increase in homelessness. So like I say, it's consistent with what we've seen in the past, but at the same time, that's very disappointing because in spite of these extraordinary efforts that we've made and these one-time resources we've had, we're not slowing the rate of homelessness. And I know that on our agenda next month is our first update on our regional Pathways Home program, and I'm very much looking forward to that. But I know that the goal of that program was to reduce homelessness by 25%, I believe, over, was it 4 years or 5 years?
I think I want to say 2025, looking at Amy.
Yeah. Over
20.
So I think it's over 5 years. And so I guess the question I would have next month, if we don't have it on the tip of our tongues today, is that 25% goal of reducing homelessness, does that anticipate that we're going to continue to see 16% a year increases? Okay, that's what I was hoping you would tell me, is that we were anticipating it would continue to rise, and our goal is to reduce that larger number by 25%. So thank you very much. I look forward to getting that update and all of us collaboratively and as a region talking about this more at our meeting next month.
And thank you, Chairman. I would also like to say that there's also other factors like non-renewal of leases. So you can't, keep somebody from being evicted if the landlord just does not renew their lease. And
Sure.
also if rents increase and people are on fixed incomes or low wage earners, it also affects their ability to stay in those apartments. And a part of the larger regional campaign is to educate people about that. And I would be remiss to thank the mayor of Fountain Hills for their contribution to our regional education campaign. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mayor Gallego.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm glad to go after you because we certainly will echo the comments you were made, and I'm glad that we're going to be continuing to talk about this at our next meeting. I think it's important that we address this, building on the data we had about evictions in really every part of Maricopa County, and such a high percentage of our residents who say they are in danger of eviction. Adding on to that, Nikki's comment about non-renewal of leases. This is a huge and growing challenge. We should look at it also in the context of the Arizona State Legislature, which has had a number of bills that I think many mayors have felt were not the most productive solutions to this. So it's incumbent upon us as city leaders to talk about what we are doing and to propose the most productive solutions. Many of us worked together on a bill that would have dramatically changed how we do land use planning and zoning. There's also a bill right now on urban camping that I think many mayors have been working on and have concerns that it would require us to take actions that are not consistent with the court opinion in the Boise case. Phoenix is happy to step up, and in our budget, our council has said affordable housing will be a huge priority. But I think the more mayors can talk about what they're doing on affordable housing and fighting homelessness in their budgets, the better. For those of you who have contracted with Phoenix-based service providers to help address homelessness and evictions, just would appreciate your support of Phoenix residents who are impacted and trying to provide support for those services that are in their neighborhood. But we ought to work very proactively to talk about what we are doing on housing. The city of Phoenix, we've been approving several thousand new units every month and really trying to do our part on supply. And we also have a city affordable housing plan. So the more other cities have those plans, it would be great if MAG could help bring them together and share that cities are leading in this area, because we are hearing more and more from our residents about how impacted their families and communities are. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor Giles, Kevin Hartke.
Yes, Mayor Hartke.
Yeah. Nikki, I want to thank you for the presentation. I know we had a robust team out there counting this year, and over the course of COVID, we had also put a lot of resources to hire homeless navigators that helped us get a good idea and good count. So it was no surprise to us that our numbers also went up higher than the region, because I know we just had better counters. And this will be, I know something that was important to me and all of us is this gives us an accurate number that once we start talk about diminishing and reducing homelessness, at least we've got a good number to start with. many of us who have been contributing and trying to lower the PSPRS public safety, their pension funds were, always felt that was out of control and never knew how we were able to impact that with monies applied. But in this case, I really think this gives us an accurate number, that we have a good baseline, that when we start talking about reducing homelessness, it starts with this number, not last year or previous years. And it will help us give a good measurement. So I do want to thank you and Nikki and the work that the Continuum is doing. And we look forward to engaging with our mayors to see what we can do to reduce numbers and help people out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Hartke. Other comments or questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
The
Mayor
more I
Peterson.
listen to it, the more concerned I get. We appear to be going at 16 to 17% a year if we take the 2 years into account. And yes, we're trying to reduce it by 25%. That's still a huge number, and we're still on the upswing. I'm wondering if there's a way, rather than wait a year and do these on an annual basis, can you take 3, 4, 6 individual markets, neighborhoods that you have data for, and let's monitor them, because we're coming out of a period where, rent subsidies and those kinds of things, no eviction, are going to be taken away. And we could see a dramatic increase in the short term. And I'd like to know how that's impacting what's happening in the marketplace before a year from now.
Chairman, members of the council, to answer your question is, you definitely can do that. And MAG is here to support those initiatives. If there's communities that want to do, account more than once a year, we fully support that. The city of Tempe last year, I worked at the city of Tempe last year, and our community wanted to make sure we did a point in time count, even though one was not done, because of COVID-19. But we also, in the city of Tempe, they do a summer point in time count as well, just to get an indication, twice a year of what those numbers are. But I'll tell you that the numbers were really the same.
Thank you.
To that point, and again, I'm looking forward to our discussion next month where we talk about our regional Pathways Home program, and that goal of reducing by 25%. That's a minimum, right? And I think we can be more aggressive, and I think these are very disturbing statistics. And if we feel there's a need for a call to action, maybe even a more ambitious goal than we set a few months ago, then I think that'd be wonderful, that we listen and to the statistics that are coming in, and maybe ask what we can do to adopt a more aggressive goal than reducing it by 25%. When we're saying this, you like to say, in spite of these one-time major federal investments, we're continuing to see the same rate of growth. Any of us that have been out of town, been to the West Coast, I was in Austin, Texas a week ago, and there were, every median in the city had tents on it. And was in Washington, D.C. a few days later. And again, it's just ubiquitous, your urban camping in all of the major cities of the United States. So it's not, clearly that's what's headed this direction. And Mayor Gallego will tell you that it's already here. So we do, I think, next month need to come prepared to discuss whether or not our plan is aggressive enough.
Well, thank you, Chairman and members of the council. To your point, also our regional education campaign will help tell that story as well, and hopefully help your communities increase affordable housing. So we should be launching that in May, which will be hopefully help tell that story to your communities of why it's so important to welcome in for affordable housing.
Before we leave this topic, well, we still have to vote on this, but there was another. I know the mayors love to steal ideas for each other, and we're all looking for best practices. Mayor Gallego, in a conversation I had with you, Mayor, a week or so ago, you indicated that at every meeting now you're, as you say, proactively discussing what your city is doing about increasing housing, overcoming the housing shortage. And I think every meeting or so, don't you say at this meeting, we just approved X number of housing units, and for the year, that's, here's our running total. And I think that demonstrates, a very intentional effort on the part of the city of Phoenix to be proactive in trying to provide more housing.
Thank you. Yes, we were trying to respond from concerns that housing was not being built and that cities were not approving things. And so we've been trying to really lead with data and just talk about how many thousands of housing units we have already approved this year, in part to provide policymakers at the state legislature with data for them to decide what is the real challenge, because our feeling in the city of Phoenix, it is not lack of support from city leaders to build new housing that should be the focus, but really the affordability and economic challenges.
Thank you. Like I say, I'm going to shamelessly steal that idea and try to follow your example and do that in Mesa as well. Mayor Weiss.
Mayor Gallego brings up a great point. We had our meeting on Monday. We approved 1,400 new housing units in Avondale, all multifamily and townhomes. And townhomes and condos are something that's lacking in the West Valley. We see them in Gilbert and Chandler, Scottsdale, Mesa, Tempe, but we don't see them in the West Valley. And I think that's a bridge for people who are in multifamily right now who want to buy a home, but cannot. The numbers are not there. And I made that exact comment, Mayor Gallego, with a developer we've been working with for 4 years, Nico Howard and his father, Wayne. And it was a collaboration between the two parties, and it got done. But my comment was that the legislature, while they make broad comments about how there's animosity between cities and developers, the truth is there isn't. Developers in the cities want, in most cases, the same thing, and that's to provide low-cost, quality housing to residents. And I think the more that message gets out, the better off we all are. So, Mayor Gallego, thank you for that information. I think that's something that I will steal also for our council.
Mayor Dickey.
Thank you. I was late because I was listening to the hearing for that strike everything bill to remove municipalities' ability to collect rental tax. And the city of Phoenix was bantered around as having so much of a surplus this year, and how this is going to help with the housing issues. And despite the discussion of it being, 10 or even $20 a month, as opposed to rents going up by $500, $600, and $700, the bill did pass 5-4 to 0-1. And it's quite amazing to me that we sit and try to do the things that we're doing to actually get into the deepness of the problem. And I know that it's not the same for me as it is for many of you, but just a disconnect between the conversation, so many questions or things that were said that just really aren't the way it is. And so I continue to appreciate being in this group. And the contrast between just turning that off just now and listening to us is the indication that the 20 and 30 years of history here between the legislature and the rest of us just doesn't seem to be changing. But I want to thank you very much for all your leadership and everything that we're trying to do here together.
Thank you, Mayor Dickey. I mentioned earlier where we were voting on this. That was a mistake. This item is on our agenda just for information and discussion.
That's correct.
But before we leave this, any other comments? All right. Thank you very much, Nikki. And again, we look forward to, I would encourage all of us to come prepared next month for another good discussion on this topic. Next item on our agenda is an update on the MAG emerging technology efforts presented by MAG Director of Transportation Technologies and Services, Vladimir Lipschitz, and Emergency Technology Program Manager, Shu Yao Hong.
Could you stand closer to the microphone?
It was off here.
You can pull it closer too, I believe.
On MAG emerging technology efforts. Just by way of a reminder, we presented this update to MAG Management Committee once, and we also have presented it just before COVID at the end of 2019 when we were at the beginning of this program. Next slide, please. So our motivation largely is the same for this effort and what we discussed at 2019. Back then we were developing MAC regional transportation plan. Now we have it, but our motivation is still support of the implementation of the new regional transportation plan. We also would like to provide information to our decision makers about new technology benefits, drawbacks, and potential impacts of new technologies. One of the main reasons we're doing it is also facilitate emerging technology and innovation in the region by providing services to member agencies and making it easier for our members to look at different innovations and deploy different technology pilots. We do it by basically taking on ourselves burden of contractual work, which is very non-trivial for emerging technologies, funding most of these efforts, and also providing unbiased evaluation for these emerging technology pilots and other efforts. And I will talk in a second how exactly we do it. We also feel that these efforts are very important for our collaboration with various partners in the region and the state. These efforts are important to accelerate pace of innovation in the region and also attract new technology vendors and broaden technology options available to our members. Next slide, please. The way we started this effort was by collaborating with three largest universities in Arizona, ASU, UFA, and NIU. Back then, we just assembled a group that started to look at how we can go about this effort, where to start, and how we can develop a systemic approach to emerging technology efforts in the region, innovation, and very popular term, and also smart region, smart city efforts. By the way, all the pictures you see on this slide is from our real technology pilots. So here you see Shuyao on this particular picture, working on one of the pilots. Right now, we formalize this group, and we call it Public Universities Task Force, and we develop master service agreements with all three universities that you see on this slide. Next slide, please. We looked at, first of all, how to be more systemic and about our efforts, because of course there are many different efforts in this domain going on in this region, in the state, and nationwide. So Public University Task Force help us to, first of all, take a snapshot of the situation that we had back then. At the end of 2019, we released a Smart Region report available on our website, collected comments, and also we developed at least starting point for our methodology and kind of more systemic approach, how we go about efforts. If you look at this dial, if you align application domains, main factors affecting technology pilots, for example, main infrastructure system elements, main technological trends and solution, in the intersection of all this, you get your pilot basically. And that's how we do it, to make sure we kind of hit all these main aspects of technological innovation. Next slide, please. We also took a very detailed look around the country and overseas as well. ASU Center for Smart Cities and Regions help us to conduct a very detailed surveys for various peer MPOs, DOTs, and cities. And the conclusions back then were that, number one, piloting technologies is a very common approach that everybody is doing, but there is no one single approach that we can say is the best practice back then, at least. So everybody was trying to figure out their way in how they will go about it. We talked to various council of governments and cities and DOTs, and pretty much we didn't see a clear winner in their approaches. Equity was a very important component that was identified back then through numerous interviews. And also many MPOs saw emerging technologies as something distinct from the other planning efforts that they were doing. Of course, also they need to be flexible and adaptable. We have these details, interviews, and reports about this effort when we did it. Next slide, please. So right now, of course, going back to today, we're in somewhat different situations. We all hope that COVID is at last to some degree behind us. We have new regional transportation plan. Emerging technologies was identified as one of the main programmatic areas in our new plan. As a result, we institutionalized emerging technology program. We didn't have it back then, to be more systemic and organized about these efforts. And we have clearly defined goals in our region plan that we need to emphasize through our smart region efforts. Next slide, please. The approach that we developed so far involves the main elements that we're showing on this slide. So we have, of course, our members, and we actively solicit interest from our members. We have on the other side vendors and contractors and consultants who are also very proactive in the field. Sometimes they approach our member agencies, and together the teams that come to us, sometimes they approach us, and sometimes we have interest expressed from our members to conduct and to test out this or that technology and conduct certain technology pilots. Our public university task force provides independent evaluation for technology pilots. They all sign conflict of interest form, and they're not involved in corresponding pilots financial or any other way. So to provide us unbiased, independent, in-depth evaluation of our technology pilots. And this effort was guided by a technical advisory group that we assembled back then. Now we, at the next step, we'll talk about next step and where we want to move with this, and get your guidance on that in a few more slides. Originally, this effort started with 400,000 for a fiscal year. This effort in itself, you can say, was a pilot, and we saw actually tremendous success both on the side of response we got from the vendors who replied to our solicitations, and also from the side of the member agencies. We issued a memo back then to member agencies actually soliciting interest in technology pilots and technology efforts, and we received overwhelming response. As a result, this budget went very fast, and Regional Council approved, amended this budget to $1.45 million back then. In our current biennial Unified Planning Work Program, we allocated $500,000 per year for this technology efforts. You can see it on this slide. And also, same budget we kept for the public university task force that provide independent technology evaluations for this effort. Next slide, please. I want to pass it over to Shiyao to do a little bit look in depth, like what we accomplished and how on technical side this technology piloting went in the region.
Mr. Chair, members of the Regional Council, as Vladimir already alluded, we received strong interest from the private sector as well, which is critical for this effort. We were successful even with our first RFQ advertisement back in 2019, which resulted in a large and diversified pool of qualified consultants, as shown on the slides, including general engineering consultants, telecom providers, and auto OEM, as well as new vendors and startups that we have not worked before. In addition, many of our prime consultants bring in additional sub-consultants under their team, further enhancing the pool of technology choices we could pilot under this program. Next slide, please. These maps give you a quick glance of the piloting efforts to date. Despite the pandemic, we have executed 13 emerging technology pilots across the region, shown in red color on the map. Some are completed, while many of them are still ongoing. In addition, we have more than 10 pilot ideas in the pipeline under initiation and planning stages. Some are not shown on the map because the specific area or location has not been determined yet. We got a good diversification of pilots by technologies, by different modes of travel, by different application and use case, such as safety, ITS, and planning. We also got a good geographic distribution across the region here, as shown. Next slide, please. This table presents the partners involved in each of the ongoing and completed pilots. As shown here, almost all pilots involve a large team of stakeholders from member agencies, consultants and vendors. evaluators from universities, as well as MAG staff, oftentimes across different programs within MAG. This really highlights the need for strong collaborations and close coordinations to make a pilot idea to life. We also really appreciate all the member agencies who champion these pilots, working with us from drafting a scope to helping with implementations and deployments to providing feedback for evaluation. Next slide, please. Lastly, I want to add a few more words about technical implications and results for the pilots to date, although some of them are still ongoing. I cannot go into details here for obvious reasons, so I will offer two examples. First of all, our pilots have identified mature computer vision technologies for object trackings and identifications that are promising for various applications, most notably for pedestrian count and detection at intersections to improve safety and efficiency, but also collect non-motorized data for planning purposes. Secondly, we found out through piloting that vehicle trajectory data is a promising new data source for various planning, safety, and operations applications. And this is actually a great example that a pilot idea now become a mainstream activities under our transportation data program to really move this forward as a services we provide to our member agencies, but also as for analysis for our internal planning purposes. We were happy to provide more details offline to any interested members or your staff, and more information will also be available on the program's webpage once it's launched. With that, I will transfer it back to Vladimir to conclude with the policy implications and next steps.
Next slide, please. Thank you, Xiao. So lessons learned and some policy implications. As usual, when you start doing something hands-on and dive deep in some subject matter, we often discover that reality is much more complex than some assumptions. So some of the pilots, or actually I should say like most of the pilots, they demonstrated that qualifying conditions apply pretty much to all technologies. You can have an excellent technology that really works very nicely in one corridor, for example, but it will not work as well in another corridor. That's one thing. You also will have this, or sometimes it's called the halo effect, that we think if the companies looks great and all the other parameters looks great, the pilot will go well. It's not always the case, and some small startup can have actually a great technology effort. So we need to be really careful and not to make any assumptions as we go forward on this. Also, it became very obvious that same hardware and same software solutions that we're applying and deploying can be used for various purposes. There are no clear boundaries that this particular solution is just for safety or safety analytics, and this one just for traffic signal optimizations. Very often it can be combined, and very often basically these boundaries become blurred, and we can look at the same technology for different use cases and different purposes. We also found very clearly that technology, and that relates to the dial I was showing in the beginning of this presentation, is just one of many, many factors. Very often, the most important factors are not technological factors. It's very legal factors, policy, resources, and all the way down even to frontline staff attitudes. We cannot do successful implementation of a technology if staff is overburdened, if they don't have time or desire to deal with some additional workload, and this also leads to the importance of champions at all levels. We need champions at jurisdictions, at vendors, and evaluation teams. Without very strong champions who are actually pushing forward these technological efforts, it's almost impossible to accomplish these very complex endeavors. Good communication, as Xiao showed, and good rapport between different members of the team is extremely important. We found that basically we cannot do it just by ourselves. We cannot do it just us and jurisdictions. We really need very strong collaboration between all players, even for a particular pilot project. Frequent communications and minimization of assumptions are very critical. We also plan to expand our relations. We mostly did it in technical domain, and most of our experts right now on the Public University Task Force are technical experts, but we plan to expand it to the economic, social, and other aspects of the evaluations that are at least as important. Next slide, please. And that leads me to the next step where we would like to take it and with your guidance. So first of all, our current Unified Planning Work Program gives us means to continue in the two main direction of supporting RTP implementation and providing these services to our member agencies. We also would like to find a permanent home for the emerging technology efforts, either in one of the committees, a new committee, or a working group of the committee, or any other solution. We'll be looking for a guidance from our policy committees on that matter. And the committee guidance, we would like to transition from proof of concept approach that basically we conducted right now, and we saw that it work, and come first with first come first serve kind of pilot pipeline with some filtering. We did develop criteria, but we want to have a more organized approach based on the criteria and based on the selection process conducted through the committee. That's yet to be discussed as well. And the committee's guidance, we would like to develop for our new program, program policies, processes, procedures, basically get ready for the implementation of the new regional transportation plan and hopefully sales tax renewal. We also want to expand our evaluative work and pilot identification, do it again like in a more systemic way through the cooperation with universities, member agencies, and vendors. And that, Mr. Chair, members of the regional class, conclude my presentation. I'll be glad to answer any questions. Next slide, please.
Thank you very much, Vladimir and Shuyao. We have questions for these gentlemen from the membership. Yes, Mayor Peterson.
This was an excellent presentation. As you look at other markets across the country, are there some that you can identify that you may say they are really doing well in this area? And are they doing things differently that we can learn from? Or do they have advantages like lower cost of land or lower energy costs or different tax structures or different education systems? What can we learn, from Austin, from Salt Lake, from the Tennessee, et cetera? Is there anything that can apply to us here that we can borrow, as Chairman Giles said, good ideas into our program?
Thank you, Mayor Peterson. Definitely, and we actually it's an ongoing process. What you describe, it's not like one-time effort. We do it all the time, basically through various channels, even through communications with vendors. We get this kind of information all the time. They naturally very eager to show us what they did somewhere else. We also in ongoing maintain ongoing excellent rapport with I would say with other peer MPOs, councils of governments. So yeah, we do have this information. Of course, we need to define what does it mean to do well, right? Is it to do a lot of pilots? Is it to actually identify a lot of successful technologies, move pilots in the mainstream? Because one of our criteria, we're trying to identify pilots that can be regionally scalable and applied actually practically in the field. This effort is not so much about research per se. It's about something that is ready to be implemented, something practical, something of interest to our members. So, but definitely we do that all the time, and many efforts that you see even on the slides that Shuyao showed, they have been implemented somewhere else maybe, but not in this region. And this region definitely, so for us, it's a new thing. For us, it's innovation, maybe it's not necessarily innovation on the grand scale of thing, and that's good. We not necessarily want to be absolutely the first one to try something. So we want to be careful about selection of pilots. So yes, absolutely. It's a very good point. We're doing it all the time and we look at other regions, but again, need to be careful, like this big solicitation and big federal grant comes to mind, like, so it's not trivial how we define success, and even how different agencies and different jurisdictions define success also, right? So we want to be mindful of that, but it's a very good point, and it's ongoing. Basically, it's a process.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Peterson. Other questions for these gentlemen?
Mayor,
Mayor Gallego.
thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation and your work to help us be an innovative region. For us in Phoenix, I think some of the things that we would look at in measuring success would be, how does it improve the commutes of our residents? Do they get to spend more time with their family because they have a more efficient commute? Things that can reduce costs of our transportation and infrastructure investments are important. Environmental benefits are important to us. Safety is very important to us in Phoenix. We are concerned about the number of fatalities we have on our streets. So all of those are metrics that matter to us. The number of pilots conducted is less important to me personally. I would say that you said we maybe necessarily don't want to be the first to do something. I'm very open to that. Appreciate due diligence ahead of time. But if we want to be the most innovative county, we do have to sometimes lead in trying new technologies. I would welcome the chance to support startups, and particularly local small businesses are valuable. So if a local small business can get a pilot with MAG, I think that can be really helpful for their ability to scale and hire staff, get funding, and that would be wonderful. So those are some of the metrics that matter to us. And I guess one question for you. Could you tell the mayors here one pilot that you think will really improve the lives of the residents of Maricopa County that we might be able to share with our residents?
Well, absolutely. But first of all, I want to thank you, Mayor Gallego, because City of Phoenix was really a great partner. And we did a few pilots with the city. And that actually leads me to the answer to your question, because some of these pilots are very promising. I won't name names of the vendors because we're more about technologies. But the pilots that we did with the city for the traffic signal optimization, for example, it exactly refers to what you're saying, saving on reducing travel times. Also, the same technologies can be applied for near miss analysis, so improving safety on our roads. We also conducted a number of other pilots that look very promising, not necessarily directly related to travel, but for example, smart lighting. I think it's going to allow jurisdictions to significantly improve services when we don't need to wait for a call from a resident, but actually can preemptively see if the light is off and control it as well remotely. Things like that, but definitely this is just some examples. We definitely have other examples of very promising technologies and pilots. Again, I will be careful to say that it's not about individual vendors, because sometimes vendors evolve very rapidly. So a startup maybe don't have a good product right now, but in 1 year they can be leading the field. So that's we observe that as well. So, but hope that answers your question, and we look forward to further work with all jurisdictions and with City of Phoenix.
Thank you. Any other questions from our membership on this topic? I have I think a question and a comment. I think this is a great example of the wonderful role that MAG plays as our metro planning organization on transportation related issues and the importance of pursuing emerging technologies for traffic movement and control. I think another topic in this area, I hope that we can, I'm going to ask this to look into on maybe and report back shortly, is our response to the infrastructure bill as it relates to electric vehicle infrastructure. I think we've all heard presentations recently about, that there's some dedicated money that's going to come to our region for electric vehicle charging stations. That's going to arrive. I think we need to have a regional plan so that we don't have, a charging station in Mesa that's across the street from a charging station in Tempe. Or there needs to be some coordination there. But then also, and maybe more importantly, I think we need to be aggressive, because we're going to get some dollars automatically for that purpose that need to be, again, planned well. But then also, I think we've heard presentations from former New Orleans Mayor Mitch Landrieu saying that a good part of the federal funds that are available are coming in the form of competitive grants. And so our region needs to be competing for those additional dollars. So It's okay that we don't have an answer now, but Eric and others, I think, can you please tell us what role is MAG going to play as the regional planning organization to help us respond to that?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Giles, members of the Regional Council. We actually just had an internal meeting last week to organize ourselves because there's a number of interrelated programs under the Infrastructure Act, including EV charging technology or infrastructure, carbon reduction program, resiliency, some climate change. So all these are interrelated, obviously. They're different programs. So we're still looking for guidance from USDOT on many of these programs. But I will say, relative to EV charging infrastructure, for example, the first allocation of that is going to the state DOTs, and Federal Highway Administration's guidance is that that's to be deployed in rural parts of the states. So at least in this first round of funding, that money is going to go elsewhere in the state under federal highway guidance. There are some programs that we're waiting for more criteria to be established and the process to be established in some of these other programs that we will continue to monitor. But we're also are launching some planning work on EV charging infrastructure planning activities too, to make sure that that we have things organized and planned appropriately too. So that's we're launching that effort here shortly. Also.
Great. Well, yeah, if the first round of money is dedicated for rural, all the more reason I think that we get ready for competing as an urban area for the federal funding to expand electrifications and the charging stations.
And this first level of funding is only $11 million for the state of Arizona. And it's, once again, it's to be deployed in rural Arizona. So $11 million is a lot of money. I'm not making light of that, but spreading that across the entire state, that doesn't go very far.
Great. Well, I think all of us would love to get more updated on this maybe at future meetings, but thank you. Other questions on this item before we move on? All right, thank you again. This was on our agenda for information and discussion only. Item 8 on our agenda is the legislative update. We invite Nathan Pryor, our legislative director, to provide an update. Nathan.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Regional Council. Just continuing on that conversation about federal grant opportunities, particularly part of the bipartisan infrastructure law. As Patrick Stone mentioned earlier, we're seeing notice of funding opportunities still coming out this week. And in fact, late breaking 10:30 a.m. Eastern today, USDOT announced a release of a combined NOFO, Notice of Funding Opportunity, called a Multimodal Project Discretionary Grant. This is a bundle of 3 grant opportunities. One already existing, that would be the infra grant, the Infrastructure for Rebuilding America program, bundled with 2 new programs, the National Infrastructure Project Assistance Program and the Rural Surface Transportation Grant Program. Again, released just this morning. We're getting more details on that. We're seeing applications due on May 23rd, later in 2 months' time. So more information to come on that, as staff will be looking at that and reporting back to member agencies on that. So more federal grant opportunities. Next slide, please. So welcome to day 73 of the Arizona State Legislative Session. This is the last week for committee hearings for bills to be heard in the House of Origin. Today, I'm going to focus on enabling legislation, but again, going back to earlier conversation, we are tracking bills related to homelessness, affordable housing. Of note, of course, Senate Bill 1581 on the sanctioned camping, Senate Bill 1117, exemption for affordable housing projects, and also Senate Bill 1531 that would appropriate money to the Housing Trust Fund. We continue to track those bills. But again, turning back to the enabling legislation, we reached a significant milestone last week. We saw Senate Bill 1356, sponsored by Senator Pace, did pass on the Senate floor 21-9. Why is that important? Because it retains the emergency clause provision. So that remains intact. Why is that important? We need this emergency clause to meet county election timelines. So when a bill is enacted into law, Usually there's about a 90-day delay or so after the legislature adjourns until that bill is enacted. If we were to continue down that path, giving our late March date today, we would be in jeopardy of not achieving the county timelines for calling that ballot. So very important that we have this supermajority threshold in Senate and House. Again, that was reached in the Senate. Senate Bill 1356 is scheduled to be heard in the House Transportation Committee this afternoon. Of course, thank you to Senator Pace for leading this in the Senate. Did a fantastic job on the Senate floor, addressing issues as they came up. So thank you to our bill sponsor, Senator Pace. Turning back to House Bill 2598, this is the companion bill to 1356. That did pass in House Transportation Committee back in February 9th with 8 ayes, 3 nays, and 1 absent. That is awaiting to be heard in House rules. So the House Rules Chair has a practice that they like to see 16 members of the majority in the affirmative before they agendize that to the Rules Committee. So that conversation is still ongoing. We are working with leadership and bill sponsors to help navigate those conversations and how we move House Bill 2598 forward, because as obviously as you can see, 1356 is going to go to that same committee today. So we are kind of in a limbo right now, working to address this procedurally and moving this forward. So with that in mind, Senator Pace did introduce a striker to House Bill 2685. That was heard this past Monday. This is a contingency vehicle. So if for some reason we do get stuck in procedural machinations, but specifically in the House, this is a fallback vehicle to help us navigate going forward. So, Mr. Chairman, overall, I think we're trending in a positive direction. We're seeing movement. The passage in Senate, again, was significant. So hopefully that's applying a little bit of gentle, friendly pressure to our House members to nudge them and move this forward. Of course, we want to thank our member agencies for their conversations with legislators and reaching out. Really encourage you to keep reaching out to members of the House, obviously for the reasons stated. Mr. Chairman, that completes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Nathan. Questions for Nathan?
I should note, Mr. Chairman, in my notes, we did have a conversation with Management Committee on this regarding what happens if we don't meet our timelines here. And obviously, we have a regional transportation plan. We have a transportation improvement program, or kind of capital spending, if you will. It could reach a point where we need to relook and rethink our plan and program, potentially slowing down some projects just to be responsible stewards of funding coming to the region. So I'm just noting that as well. We're passing that along as well to members of House and Senate in their discussions.
Thank you. No, I remain optimistic. I think we might not get the majority or the emergency numbers that we need in the Senate, but I guess that means we just go on the 2024 ballot. But we've got it teed up, for the county supervisors and the governor and everybody. So I think, like as Nathan said, if you have any bench sitters in the House, please do everything you can, to help us get out of the House. And let's not give up. I'm still very optimistic that this is going to turn out well. Any other comments? All right, thank you. Next item. Thank you very much, Nathan. Next item is the request by a regional council member for future agenda items. Are there any requests? Thank you. Moving on. Item 10 is comments or announcements from the membership. I just have to say that I can't let Mayor Ortega's Giants jersey go uncommented on. I am proudly wearing my Chicago Cubs shirt today and will be driving as fast as I can from here to a Cubs game right now. And there you go. Thank you, Mayor Ortega. Loud and proud. I think you're going to make the long walk across your parking lot probably to your stadium here in a few minutes.
It's a beautiful game on a beautiful day in a great state. And thank you for everything you do, Chair.
Thank you. I think it is noteworthy for all of us, but thank God that the labor disputes resolved and this boon that we have for our local economy is back, and encourage everybody to to go out and enjoy spring training.
I do have a question for the chair, though.
Go ahead.
I mean, I think it'd be entertaining for everyone to see if the mayors of cities that had spring training facilities did a friendly bet of which one of their teams would go further at the end of the year. I don't see our Goodyear friend here, or I think Mayor Hall's still on the call. So that'd be interesting to see. Mayor Woods is there, so.
We have had years where we've had spring training teams playing each other in the World Series. That's a best case scenario for all of us. So bets were made and won and lost back then. So I think I might have won that because I think that was the year the Cubs won the World
16.
Series. Yeah. So isn't it fun to be involved in baseball? And like I say, I encourage all of you to go out and have a good time at a spring training. If there's nothing else, I think that concludes the items on our agenda, and our business is concluded, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.